Hello, everybody. My name is Esther. Welcome to our third session of these Shorts and Talks. Today we have an interesting session lined up. We are trying to change a little bit and inform ourselves about a few things around the TV and entertainment industry. We have interesting guests today who have agreed to be part of this, and I'm very grateful to them, and everybody else has been supporting us, and I'm sure will be very useful to everyone what we learned today. So anyway, my name is Esther Shambaine. Like I said before, I'm here at the National Film and Television School. I'm pursuing a master's course in creative business. And yeah, I'm finishing to the end of this year, and I'll give our guests to introduce themselves, and then I'll come back and take it from there. We can start with Nelson from UK, or he'll tell you where he is also at this point.
Hello, thanks for this opportunity, Esther. I'm from the UK. My name is Nelson Asare. I'm a freelance creative working in TV, film, and events. I'm currently in Australia, Sydney. So the time here is 22:02 Sunday night. So quite late, but you know, we make things happen for, you know, the friends and people that we have, and we're trying to push something nice and be creative, share ideas. So I'm very glad to be part of this, and to also get the chance to speak to our creatives.
Thank you so much, Nelson. Bonnie is also a live TV director from Kenya, a very good experience as well. We are also trying to connect each other and know each other. Bonnie.
Hey, good afternoon. It's afternoon in Nairobi, Kenya. It's 3 p.m. here in Nairobi. My name is Bonnie Katei, as you've heard from Esther. I am a live TV director and producer. I direct shows and live events and concerts and anything that is filmable. I work with creatives, I work with producers, I work with line producers to put this concept into stories that we can be able to tell in live formats, both in studio and on location. And as well, when I'm not in a studio OB or in a studio sort of stuff, I'm out there telling stories in documentary formats, and that's what I am. And thank you, Esther, for having me on the platform. I would love to be as helpful as I can.
Thank you so much, Bonnie, for accepting this. And we are actually, this is how we should be. This is how I envision ourselves as Kenyans, be all over the world. So here we have Bonnie in Nairobi and Nelson in Australia, in Sydney. So I mean, if we can be able to organize ourselves and travel in terms of the ideas and our projects and everything, I think that will be very nice for us, you know. So when we talk about TV entertainment, and I think I'll just start with what we know and what we have seen in Kenya. We're talking about reality TV shows, you know, and game shows and entertainment kind of shows, the music that you see, music shows, comedy shows, dancing, all those shows that you've seen. I can give a few, like Big Brother. Big Brother, you all know, you've seen it, you know, even a version I think was done in Kenya at some point. And I think there was one that was called, is it the one for Trump, the Apprentice, the one that used to say, yeah, Apprentice, that you're fired. Is it you're fired? So those kinds of shows, you know, those are the shows that we want to talk about. And I think they are huge business here, and UK is known to do them very well. Not to get into the details about it, but even just knowing how do you work out a good concept? How do you take it to the market? Of course, develop it very well and take it to the market. How do you find that concept to go beyond Kenya? Is that possible? How do others do it? That's what we want to talk about today. So I'll give an opportunity to Nelson, because he's the one who has studied this in school. He's also an alumni of the school. He's not a student. He's had good experience, and he should be able to introduce a bit about what he's been doing and share with us. And Bonnie, the same, will also share with us what he's also been doing in Kenya in this kind of shows, and then we can have a good discussion around it. Nelson?
Amazing. Bonnie, if I'm able to share my screen.
You should. Let me see.
That work?
Yeah. You should.
Nice. Can you still see?
Yes.
Lovely. So as I said, I'm Nelson Asare, film, TV, events freelancer. I just wanted to put together some visuals just so that anybody watching can get an example of what I've worked on, just to kind of, because we were speaking, but I just want to at least show visuals so you can understand what's possible, what's doable, what's achievable, and also, so at least it's attainable and aspiration. But before I get into what I do, I can talk about what I did. So as Easter mentioned, I also went to NFTS, which is the National Film Television School in the UK, and I studied producing and directing TV. So in these shots, all the ones on the left-hand side are part of our modules, our courses. The man standing up was our tutor when I was there. And at that time, I was directing a live show that we do where we have performers and people doing tricks, songs, rapping, dancing, and all of that sort of stuff. And then on the right hand is images from my final grad project, where my team partner and I, the guy at the front next to me, we came up with an idea for a game show, straight from our idea, but we had inspiration from shows that we both enjoyed and we're both fans of game shows. And then you get given a budget to create your own TV show that fits, and it has to fit a certain time frame. So it's all quite realistic. They tell you how long you have, how much money you have, and you have to make it within a certain time frame. And then this in the middle is a article that was posted about one of my other projects while I was still a student in the school, which obviously the title was Learning to Produce and Direct Like a Pro. And in that, my other classmate that I was working with at that time and myself were interviewed by a big industry magazine. You can see at the bottom, it's called Broadcast. I'd also recommend them because they're really good with information about which shows are just released, who's moved from this company to that company, who's about to film this or where they're about to film it. So it's called Broadcast Magazine. It's accessible anywhere around the world. And yeah, they interviewed us basically about our project and what we did. And so it was quite cool because as a student to get interviewed by the biggest magazine in the UK for creativity wasn't something that I anticipated would happen. So yeah, that's one of my proud achievements. But I want to talk about what I do nowadays after graduating. But before I move on to that, I do want to recommend the National Film Television School, as it says in the bottom right-hand corner. They're an educational institution. They're really good for helping people who have talent to develop their skills, to grow, to get opportunities before they get into the industry. So it's a safe place to develop your skills. It's a good place to meet other creatives, like how we're all on the platform now in different countries, from different backgrounds, but we all have a shared passion for making content, and that's brought us together. So you would be in a creative school and a creative space where you can meet other people like yourself and grow together, which is quite cool, and I really appreciated that. So here are some images of over the years projects that I've worked on, ranging from reality TV to game shows to events like the BAFTA Awards. And one thing I did want to say is the picture at the top where it has all those people, one thing I realized is out of all of those people, only 6 of us were Black. And 3 of them, 4 of them were part of the people on the screen. So they're either like celebrities or the talent. And only 2 of us worked behind the scenes. So that's to tell you the fact that we need more Black people in entertainment. We need more Africans definitely in entertainment. Were not enough. And I think there are the people who are interested, but they don't know that these things exist. That's partially why I thought, let me put together visuals, because when you can see the picture and you can see how much the Black faces stand out, that is to tell you that, like things aren't quite as balanced as they could be, and there's a lot of room to go. Moving on to the next set, here's me also working on like events such as the FA Cup final. Sometimes I do like talks or works with other sort of companies to kind of chat about my experience or how I got into the industry. Guy Ritchie film that I worked on. And interestingly enough, when I was on honeymoon in Thailand, that's where I saw the film for the first time. because it wasn't available in the UK. So yeah, I finally watched the film in Thailand, which is crazy. And then Love Island, and then Britain's Got Talent, which is also something I've worked on, and I'll talk a little bit more about as time goes on for everyone tonight. And then here, working on Glastonbury Festival. In this context, I was filming. I was a shooting researcher on this, so I was filming with the cameras and interviewing people, chatting to them about their experience and capturing the event there, and then working on Strictly Come Dancing. So that's just a little bit about me. And yeah, all of these things are achievable, and I think we need to see more people that look like us and have the same background and understanding as us, because sometimes you might be in a group where you're trying to explain an idea, but if there's not enough people that understand where you're coming from, it's harder to get the idea across, or it's harder to get people to see what you're saying. So I think there's power in numbers, and also it's good to be diverse, because then people have different things that they can bring to the table. So that's me for now, and I'd like to say thank you for that. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Nelson. That was so inspiring. And this is, making sense in terms of why I'm doing this, because I felt the same way when I'm here. In fact, I think for you, it's even better because you are used to this environment. For me, I think I even felt more like invisible completely. So I thought, let me just bring a few voices and maybe do what I can so that we're able to learn and integrate with us. Because I think that's also a problem when we are not integrated, then, these kind of ideas and, these kinds of opportunities always do miss us. So Bonnie, we can talk about you.
Mine is not. I have not worked on big shows like Nelson has done, and I don't have a big presentation. But I would say it's been a while. It's been a journey to get to be a director in television making, specifically in entertainment and live shows. It's a journey for me. I would say it's taken more than 15 years to be able to get to where you are. And to every person or young person who's watching out there, my message would be it doesn't, it's not a flip of a coin and then you find yourself at the director's seat. It takes a journey, and it takes a lot of commitment and a learning curve. I started as a camera operator, and I did a good job. I mean, I learned on the job, and slowly I got to do better at every particular challenge that I was presented with. Filmed a lot of documentaries, filmed a lot of studio shows as a camera operator, and grew to become a floor manager, which is a role I loved. I mean, I loved to basically, a floor manager is a director on the floor. On set, that's the director. That's the person who is getting all instructions from the director and conveying them to the host, and making it the flow work. That really made me realize that I had the ability to actually, take in instructions and communicate instructions. And that is a journey that took me to the hot seat. The hot seat is quite not interesting. I mean, I like telling trainees most of the time, given a chance, I would not love to sit in the seat, because it doesn't make you a boss. It just makes you a leader whose responsibility is hefty. I mean, if any show fails, it fails on the shoulders of the director. If it succeeds, though, it succeeds for the hosts. The people who are presenting are the guys who get the claps. But when it fails on your shoulders, and decision making becomes the order of the day. Sometimes you make good decisions that you're proud of. Sometimes you make decisions that you're like, what was I even thinking? So it takes you to be able to understand different dynamics, the host, the client, the presenters, to understand the crew that you're working with, from sound, lighting, stage, grip, every particular person that you're working with. You probably need to be as good as you can operate that particular field, so that you understand their challenges and mitigate those challenges way before you get there. Um, I think one of the highlights that I've had is, the most recent. I think the recent show that I worked on in end of January, I think January this year, was working for a children's show for Disney World and Nat Geo. Um, it, I have never worked on a children's program, and this was a conservation show. Now, it's one thing to instruct hosts or presenters. This is what I want. This is my artistic vision. This is what I see. This is what we're gonna get. But children, that's a whole different ballgame. For me, it was a big task, and it was a big studio show. Working with about a crew of about 50 packs, no audience but the children and an artificial intelligence sort of guide voice. For me, that was a highlight because the challenges were real, and I am so glad that we pulled it through. I'm so glad that the client was happy that we made a show. For me, that was a highlight of, it was a highlight. Maybe I would say it was a highlight because it's the most recent one. Maybe something else is coming. Yeah, but I think that's what I would say now.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting, and I think I would start by, because you're talking about two different markets, and we all appreciate everyone where they're coming from and what they've been able to do. I think it's good to hear both sides of the story. Like Nelson, for you, if I can ask you, when you start developing the process of a TV, how do you start from the concept, the time that you have something that is ready and taking it to the market, or how is the process like in the UK? Yeah.
I'd say the first thing is coming up with the idea itself and where to get inspiration from. Because without an idea or something creative, there's nothing to sell. And I was thinking about what kind of ways typically would we come up with an idea in development. And one way might be to create a show that's a fusion. So an example could be, you think of, how can I make a dating show and a cooking show and bring that together? So you want to find love or romance through cooking. That's one way of coming up with a show. So you think of topics and you fuse them, two different worlds, you fuse them together, and then you think, cool, these two worlds have come together, collided. Let me create something from this. Or you think about, how can I mix dancing with comedy? And then you make like a comedy dancing show, something like that. Or another way would be to inverse or flip an idea on its head to make a new show. So what I mean by that is, you could look at something that exists already that you like and think, what's the opposite of that? So an example I can think of would be something like Love is Blind is all about not seeing the people and building a relationship with them and stuff like that. Whereas the opposite would be like a Love Island is all about how you look. So you could think, yeah, Love Island successful. What's the idea? They all look good, they're attractive and stuff like that. And they're trying to find romance. How do I find romance in the opposite way? You don't let them see each other and how they look. So that's an easy way to just create an idea, look at what you like, and then flip that on its head. Or another way we like to talk about it or play with it is read the news, look at the headlines, and any topics that come up all the time, like AI. How can I make a show with AI? And then if you're the first one to get there and it pays off well and it's successful, then you're in a good place. So just look at trends that's happening in the news or online. What are people talking about on Twitter or in music? What type of music is popular now? Because there's a lot of sort of rap shows or a lot of shows about like find the next boy band, the next girl band. But now there's not that many boy band and girl bands, so you probably don't want to make that now. So understand the time that you're in and the season, and also like the trends and topics of the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good introduction. I think it's also good to hear both sides of the story, because Bonnie, how do you come up with television ideas?
Well, ours is a very different landscape. First, you realize that our concepts are very different from the UK concepts. We are very commercially dependent on who is putting money for particular programming. In essence, we're looking at commercially viable programming. If we're thinking about a game show, the first thing that will be on the table is the matrix of a game. What are we looking at? Who are we targeting with this particular game? then on what are the opportunities that, because you really do not want to go to the development of a show only halfway to realize that you're selling a show that is not viable for the market, or whoever you're trying to sell the show to is actually not relating with the kind of game show that you're working on. That's just an example. However, there are very, very many aspects that, and I totally agree with what Nelson is saying. Of course, every show has to begin at development of the ideas. You have to think, what is it that we're making? Does it sit? Does it work? When you think about, when you see it visually, is it even creating a narrative flow? Can you follow? Can you find excitement in asking, what exactly are we looking after? I like to say this a lot, that the narrative curve that in drama or in soaps is slower than in live television. In live television, we hit faster. I mean, we will go very fast on achieving what we want to do and drop the ball faster. I mean, one of the shows that I worked for a long time was a comedy series, which is, I'm proud about it because it is it's a Kenyan show, particularly for Kenyans, and anyone outside the landscape of Kenya would not even understand the jokes. And it would not even be relevant for someone who is not a Swahili speaker. And when I was going into to make this particular TV show, I was just coming from making a political debate series for the BBC. Now, my mind was structured that, everything has to make a certain linear sense. And I get there and it just was difficult because it was non-linear comedy. Until I found out that the big lesson that I was supposed to pick from that particular series was understanding the audience dynamics. I was looking to make a comedy show that I was comfortable, that I would find interesting. But the audience in Kenya appreciated a totally different format. And that's where we ended up being. And we constantly would have to answer the question, who is our target audience? Do you think they find that joke funny? No. Then we would throw the joke out of the window. And eventually, our comedy series ended up being one of the most popular comedy shows because it was it was a fusion between a comedy event and a filmed comedy event. So put on cameras, guys go up the stage, take your time, make jokes to this particular, it's an event, but then we will sit back and turn all that, cut it and form a TV show out of it. Now we didn't have a lot of time because we'd film on Saturday and we'll be live, we'll be taking the show on Sunday. And so there's not much time to edit. So I introduced a formula where, if you hit the stage, this is what you need to deliver. And slowly the comedians learned how to create comedy for television and comedy for the event. Now, our development relies on very many things, how we formulate shows. And, being versatile and being able to understand the different, formats is one of the biggest advantages I think we have. Now, I'm not saying that we are let loose. I must also point out that as Africans or as Africa, we are in a very formative stage. And that opens a really, sort of a blank slate. We can do a lot with what we have by first understanding the access that our audience has and the taste buds that our audience kind of, relate with. Now, and, to one extent, we love watching the shows that Nelson in the UK make, but we look at them and we're like, okay, I relate with this because, it makes sense. But will the larger portion of my audience find it relatable? That for me is the bigger discussion point that we would be having.
I mean, I know there's a show that is on one of the streamers, Showmax. There's one Nelson show that is a US show. It's called Housewives? Housewives of, sorry, it's Houses of Nairobi now.
Yes.
Yeah. But now it's a local format. It has just been, and people are really following it. I saw reviews. What would you comment based on what you just said?
I think the syndicating is quite an interesting formula. And I like how localization works because they've localized quite a number of things about that particular format. If you watch it carefully, you realize that it's not executed exactly the way they've executed the houses of, or the houses of LA, or So you realize that there's a few localizations that have to happen, and they do. Yes, the format works, but it has to really fit within a context of a particular sort of audience. And I think that's what that show has done, and it's working. It's working quite well. And you also have to see to it that the different classes, the different levels of acceptance. There are people who accept formats simply because that's the only format, like that's the only thing in front of their screen. It is not appointment viewing per se. It is, I have no option. But there are others who will have a point of choice. Like, I choose to watch this particular show because of A, B, C, D. I choose to watch this because, and I mean, largely they say television is made for children and women. So if you're going to appeal your show to the ladies, you've made half the journey.
I mean, for me, it's good that we have all that, but the question is even why we are doing this kind of talks is because we are trying to bring the thinking that can you make something similar that originates from Africa or Kenya and sell it to other parts of the world, because that's how the business is. And if you are able to do that, then you're in business, because doing localized versions of others is still, we're not yet there yet. And that's what we're trying to improve our thinking. Okay, what else? And what can we do better? So that we're able to do this. So I mean, we can move on to
answer that as well.
Yeah,
I can say in terms of like thinking internationally, one question when you're coming up with an idea is think to yourself, is it too local and too niche? So for example, if you came up with an idea like I want to make a show where cows do racing and sell it around the world, I can probably sell it in Spain, but that's fine, and in Turkey. But if I said that in India, it wouldn't work, because like it's a sacred animal in India. So you need to also think, can this show work in different countries, or will it be offensive, or will it be appreciated, and how would they interpret this in their culture? So for example, there's a term that we say which is called think global. So you want to make your show locally, but you're thinking global. So like it's global and local, think local. So you could probably think, can I come up with a food review show about like Kenyan food, or because my background's Ghanaian, or a review where the host tries out different Ghanaian foods and says, this one's good, this place is good, blah, blah, blah. Would it only work in Ghana or Kenya? Probably not. You could take it to Spain and try it with Spanish food, or you could take it to Iraq and try it with Iraqi food. So even though it's a local idea, it's global, because every country has food, and you can review different types of food from different countries in that country. So you just think local, but then take your idea and expand it. How would this work around the globe, sort of thing, is how I'd think. Because then we have shows like Britain's Got Talent. It didn't just work in the UK because it's got Britain in it, but every country, every person, everywhere has a skill and has talent. Yeah. So as long as you can do something, that show can work in any country. It just needs to feel the same. They always have the same sort of song or the same sort of style, but we all know India's Got Talent and Turkey and Portugal's Got Talent is got talent because people are doing random things. So that's how to kind of take something small and spider web it out and spread it.
I can tell you for sure, Bonnie, even in our when you listen to the markets, they are even the field markets. I think Africa doesn't register even as a market itself, meaning the kind of audience, I don't know if it's consumers, or it doesn't register at all in terms of us being considered as a market. So maybe they touch South Africa a bit, but these other parts, I don't know, they combine them with, is it the Arab world and a bit of Africa. Yeah, Middle East. So I mean, it's something to think about. Also, probably we should also stop being too comfortable. Yes, a show could work, or things that you're doing could work at the local level. But if we actually do want to make, that global whatever we have concepts to travel and to be bought or to sell, we have to start being uncomfortable and trying to find out what else can we do, and not be satisfied with what is already happening. So I think this is a thinking that we are hoping to start amongst ourselves. So if I can take it a little bit further, the idea, yes, you've developed an idea, Nelson. I mean, is it normally when you do it within a channel has taken it, or you can do it independently of a channel? You develop the idea and take it to sell to a channel, or how does it work?
It would be normally you're working for a production company, and that company has contacts at different channels, and they say, what would work on Sky Sports would obviously want sports shows, so you're not gonna pitch a music show to Sky Sports. And so what each channel makes and what their style is. And just like Bonnie said, TV's, if it's for women, like a Real Housewives, you're not gonna pitch it to the people who do mechanics, like a channel all about men and cars, and they wouldn't be interested. So you have to know your audience, just like Bonnie was saying earlier. It's all about who are you making it for, because if you don't know your audience, you'll just be wasting so much time making documents, and the first page they'll just say no. So it's just all about knowing who your audience is and what do the different channels represent, who do they represent, and who do they stand for in terms of content. So you go to the channels directly with maybe about 3-4 ideas, but maybe as a PowerPoint of 5 pages, or sometimes even a paragraph, just to say, what do you think about this? And if they're happy, you say, okay, cool, we'll go back and make a PowerPoint and expand and come back to you again. So it's like a conversation rather than like, we have this idea, and then you go to the next company, we have this idea until somebody eventually buys it, hopefully. So you just try and streamline who you're targeting.
So as a production company, you can, apart from taking it to an idea, can you try and develop it independently and then go with something almost finished, or to these networks, or it's better to do it when you're at concept level?
Yeah, I'd say is near to impossible to do it independently, to fund it, because also when you pitch that idea to the channel, they give you money to develop it. So they give you money to maybe film it in your office and to buy the kit or the equipment and things that you're gonna, if it's a game show, they'll maybe give you the money to buy the paint to spray stuff and all of that sort of stuff. That comes from the budget that they give you. And then if you do a pilot and it works in the office, they give you a bit more money. Let's do 1-day shoot. And then that's when they call Bonnie and say, we need a director to, film this in the studio. And if they like the pilot, we want a series or we want a season of this. So it's just like in-house, one episode becomes maybe 30 episodes. So it's like gradual steps, because they don't know if it will work to say, give us 30 of this until they've seen it work in a small environment.
Or unless now, like if other formats are coming from other parts of the world, they've just bought, the licensing from other companies, or from outside.
Sorry, one more time.
I'm saying if it is from other countries, not necessarily developed by the channel, they are buying it from other people outside, finished product.
That's safer. Yeah, people like that because it's safer. They will probably look at the success it's had in that country. And if it's made it to several other countries, that means people are interested around the world also. So they will try and buy the license to make it in your country. Because I know Family Feud, they made that with Steve Harvey in like Ghana and South Africa. But of course, it's like an American show, but we make that in the UK as well and stuff. So because of its success, it's easy to say, oh, we want to make that. Like how I said, Britain's Got Talent or the Masked Singer or those sort of shows, you've seen it work, so you're like, we'll buy it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also good for Bonnie to see those kinds of opportunities, because it's not just that one way. Because I know if I ask Bonnie do you actually, the way you've had Nelson describe, does that happen in Kenya for the broadcast, and people who do this, who broadcast the shows?
Yes, it does. It does. It's just that it takes different turns. You know, sometimes it's like, for instance, it's a collaboration. It's a when he was explaining, I remembered a particular show. It's really not a gaming; it's a reality show that we worked on with a friend of mine, and we walked into a broadcast house and said, "Look, we want to make a reality competition show for journalists and students in journalism schools." The show was called Top Story, and so the broadcaster loved the concept, but they were not sure how it's going to work. So we had to put in a little money of ourselves to do the pilot. And then from there, we will have to work out a matrix of how, look, this is what you're going to buy, this is how much you're going to buy the episode, and this is what we have to look for from commercial sponsorship, and this is what the value of the episode is going to look like. So yes, yes and no. It's you might not get full sponsored commissioning broadcasters who will tell you, I'm going to give you X amount to produce this series for me. But right now in Kenya, it's, you know, the chances are growing less and less of where someone can commission. And, you know, it's becoming more of a partnership between the production company and broadcasters. However, that formula is really not working for production companies because you end up having, you know, a lot of expenses on the project, on the particular episodes, unless now you're looking at, even with that kind of partnership, you're sourcing funding from external other parts, whether they are commercial or you know, USAIDs of the day or GIZs, or, you know, if someone else is putting money on the particular show. And that's why most of the time you find live shows or studio shows, writers gravitate more towards topics that are funded than
By
commercial.
donors.
Yes. So funding works easier, and I don't like it that much because I think it eats into the business model of the art. I am not free to just go like, I don't think this makes sense, because someone somewhere needs to communicate a few items. So then leverage is more or less, the balance is a bit tipped off.
So I mean, it's a problem. It's not just and also just to give you a context, it's not just what you're hearing on TV. I think it's also films, and that's a problem of is it funding? Can you say it's funding, Bonnie? Because when people have no access to funds, so the storytelling potential is curtailed because of that. Because, you know, there's no much access, and another thing that I think that works for UK is because they are production companies. I don't know if you do a show with a broadcaster, Bonnie, do you retain the rights even if it's collaboration? Because I think here they try to empower the production companies, that people who produce, so they have a bit of power and rights and things. So, you know, they own their shows, which is really good. When you have a good show, then you can keep earning from it in terms of licensing.
That's basically not our case. Most of the time is, you know, the broadcaster will take over, and if you're not keen, they will actually take away your show and do it with someone else who's cheaper.
Oh, really?
You know, and by the time you're in battle in court, you realize that you're actually fighting a big broadcaster, and you do not even have the resources to keep the court process going. So many creatives give up. I mean, I have done it before. I have presented a concept to a broadcaster, and I mean, you see, you'll sign them NDAs, but after you're done, you start hearing word that, oh, this broadcaster is actually planning to produce the same show, and you go back to them, and, you know, some of these times it gets really disappointing, so much so that you know, you don't want to do it anymore. They could go ahead and do the show, and, you know, it becomes terrible. I mean, and it's a malpractice in the business, really. It's a bad practice. Yeah. Okay. And when I choose to work with other, you know, broadcasters, I mean, like, for example, MultiChoice, that would not be their case. You know, they have a certain conduct.
MultiChoice is from South Africa, Nelson.
Yes, it's a South African. Oh, sorry. You have. So it's South Africa, but it's one of the pay cable TVs that is watched a lot across Africa. So you find that
Okay.
most of their shows, if they're successful in East Africa or they're successful in South Africa or West Africa, they might be syndicated across the globe. Sorry, across the continent. So yeah, and yes, it does. I think it makes sense for us. Did you
Well,
freeze?
for the time being, it does, but I don't think it, because even I think and this is a thing I've noticed, even Netflix and some of the films, yes. And this is also a problem we have, that you are so localized. Whatever you do, that you have no opportunity to grow. People never know you beyond the African continent, even if it's an international streamer or others, which is, the kind of deals people are getting. So opportunity to grow or get known, whether it's an actor or a director or a producer, it's not a nice thing. There has to be another formula you have to find to access or to work with others, so to be able to grow a little bit better beyond.
You know, Easter, what I think, if you ask me, I actually am of a different school of thought. I grew up in the village, and I usually say your market is not as relevant. It's not relevant to the world. I mean, it's not relevant to anyone outside that market. However, if that market becomes so dominant to that particular village that everyone knows where to go and what to do, outsiders start to pick interest with why is this market particularly dominant and the resources that revolve around that particular market. Now, in our TV or in our film business, I think the only way we're going to sort of have the stage of the world is when we are our own best. If we make films that relate with us so big that you can't ignore us. You get? I call it the Nigerian effect, where Nigerians are such an audience to their own art that even if you want to ignore them, you won't ignore them. Because if they hold a concert in London, you will not ignore their participation.
Yeah.
But if Nigerians try to, to take the world stage, the world will look, you're child play. Because when you look at the time it has taken for everybody else to advance their art and where you are at, it's not going to make sense. So just focus on yourself, so much so that the world will actually go like, hang on, these guys are up to something.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that's my
that's
view.
true. That
Good
is
point.
partly true, yes. But I think, and if we compare, and I always say that Nigerian and us, I mean Kenyans, 200 million plus, surely. You can even form your own market, as yourselves and your diaspora. Us guys are just about 50, and then talk about people who are able to consume. So in a way, even business-wise, because it's all about numbers. If you don't do beyond the little numbers you have, you'll never make that much traction. Even if you try and say we have to be good at what we do at home. And
But
I
how
think
many
that's part of the
solutions
problems
does
we have,
it-
Nelson. We are very comfortable, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I think though the thing you said about Netflix being lost in Netflix, it can be a good thing, to be fair. The fact that
Yeah.
there's so many streamers around
Yeah.
and broadcasters means if somebody says no, you've got 5 more places you can go. It's not like 10, 15 years ago where it was just TV. Now it's
Yeah.
TV and online, there's YouTube. So to a certain extent, sometimes, depending on your idea, but sometimes you don't need other people to even make your show. You might need to put some of your money and your friend add some of theirs. Everybody chips in a bit of money and together you achieve the vision. And I think that's a good way, because then if it's successful on YouTube, that also gains the traction. Like Bonnie was saying, that if you're making enough noise, people get attracted to your source and they want to know, how are you doing this? Or how are you doing this on your own sort of funding or by your own without the big name broadcasters? How are they achieving this? We want some of what they have. So sometimes you can use that to your own advantage to kind of say, we don't need their money, but it will help, obviously. But it's more so we believe in this idea so much, we're willing to use our own money to make it happen.
Yeah, and I can also add, now that I talk about budgets, I mean, our money, I can tell you, Bonnie, the kind of money they're talking about for these shows, and this is from, of course, what we are reading. Like a budget for one of these good shows is about $1 million. Is it $1 million in Europe? $1 million for an episode? Is it?
There are shows that are that expensive.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
many,
on the higher
but
side,
there
yeah.
are some,
Yeah, another's $2 million in the US dollars, and is it an episode? So I mean, honestly, if you ask me, yes, that's on the higher side. But when you look at what you're talking about from home and opportunities, if you hear of such, I mean, it gives you ideas of why can't I push a little bit more and find out what else I can do beyond. Yeah.
Tell
As
you,
inspiration.
one of my aspirations in the business is, I usually say, one day if I make a lot of money and become a very successful director, I will not want to keep directing. I actually want to be an investor in the business.
Yes.
Because that's one of the challenges that we have. We do not have people who believe in this business here in Africa. They do
Yeah.
not see the opportunities. And yes, I agree, we're not very promising. We're not very sustainable. We cannot give you money back for your investment. But are you willing to take a gamble with us?
Yeah.
You see, I would love to put in, even if not $1 million, I'd love to put in money and see the business grow from one place to another, and then so that someone else can put in money to grow from one place to the next. That will mean a lot of progression. But one of our challenges is that we're so busy sort of generating, and it's not bad, it's good, but we're so busy sort of making the content and not looking at how can we build a business model that someone else who will come after us can find a structure that they can build over, and one day we will make it through. For example, if you ask me, one of the, I think a good idea is to look at us in blocks. I've done quite a number of projects for the East. Instead of looking at a country, look at the East African,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right now, East Africa is at the verge of having a common language. So 8 countries speaking one language means it's seven countries speaking Swahili, means we've critically improved our sort of landscape from 50 million to almost 180 million viewers. Now, if I can make a TV show that can cut across that region, I am relevant. You get? So those are the ideas that you ask me, I would implement. I would say, how do I work with the East African community to be able to appeal to all these Swahili speakers so everyone can feel accommodated, everyone can feel this is our thing. So I think, yes, there's money out there and there's money in here. There's money in East Africa. There's money in West Africa. The only thing is that most of the time, I think we spend a lot of time looking outward and not looking inward and creating sort of entertainment for ourselves. Remember the show I was telling you about, the comedy show? When we looked at the ratings, the show is called Churchill Show. That's when we looked at the viewership patterns and who the demographics that were actually watching our shows, we were at the shock of our lives. The commoners are the people who enjoyed viewing our shows. So, I mean, I'm a big for audience, and I keep on telling my producer friends, I don't care how neat your work looks, if it doesn't relate with the audience, it's a pet project. You can go and show it to your relatives.
Now, I mean, what do you think, Nelson, of that small little chart? Because I think everyone is looking at things their own way.
Yeah, no, I think my favorite part was the mention about, like, Swahili being a more localized or expanded language. Because then once you, like I said, trends, once you start to understand certain trends, then you can realize, oh, this project is bigger than just my country. There are other people who need it, or other people who might benefit with this. So that's the best way to think. It's almost like this is what would be good for us, but also others might enjoy it too. So then that way you're not closing off yourself. But yeah, it's a good idea not to also be too dependent that, oh, because we don't have money, we can't make content. Because you can, but then obviously, I think sometimes if you say the money is the only thing, it's not. Like, is the idea plus the resources, which is also technically money, and like the passion behind it. So all of these things blended together makes the product. Because you can have the money, but if the idea isn't good, then you've wasted money. And you can have the idea, but if the money isn't there, people can see what you're trying to achieve. Which is kind of like our NFTS project. We didn't really have a lot of money compared to what an actual show is. Like, all we had was 10 grand. And also what's crazy about that is over the years, the money you get given, I don't know if it changed now, but 3 years ago, or 4 years ago when we made ours, the money that we got given was the same people were getting given years before. And when inflation is happening, your money is worth less. So we had to do the same thing people were doing before us, but with technically less money. So it's just sometimes you kind of work with the money you have, but if the vision cuts through the financial sort of burden that you have or the limitation, it can be a benefit to your advantage, or at least you can say, I didn't have the money, but this is the best we could do. What do you think? And then someone might be able to give feedback and it's like, okay, cool. Here's the next step, or this is what I'll do different next time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like also the idea of where you talked about if we believe, and it's true, we need more people to believe in the ideas born in the market and put in money into this because we don't have enough of such. And this is how even these companies here do the same thing, just like any other company. You put in that good idea, you put in some money. And if the idea is really good enough, you can get somebody who's not even from that market to put in money, not necessarily even that kind of money, because you've already done the first risk, you've taken the first risk. The other person probably put in a lot more to help that idea now get to another market. But it's worth, it's worth starting to think that way, because if we are to actually make good business out of these things, it definitely has to be more about numbers and reach. This is how these people here, I think, in the UK, they're export oriented. All their shows, you just listen to them, just hear how they make their concepts. They make sure they think about even the other markets,
Yeah.
how else can they sell? And they bring back that money into developing new content, and it becomes like a really good cycle of flow of money coming in and shows going out. Very good business. I think that thinking is a good thing to learn from, and
Also,
mhm.
before you continue, sorry, I just want to add, it's all about what can we get from the show. So not just even internationally, but also how can we make this benefit us on social media. It's free to create an Instagram account, so you can make your idea and have an Instagram handler or somebody who manages the Instagram and make it look cool. And somebody somewhere around the world might come across it by accident. And just by doing that, you've gained their attention and potentially maybe their funding, or you never know who they know or what they can bring to the table as well. So I think it's like being well-rounded. Some companies make merchandise, they make like water bottles or t-shirts. So they want you to also feel like not only are you just an audience and you're passive, but you're also part of the culture of the world of that show. So you can buy this because you're that passionate about it as an audience member. Or you can buy a key ring, or there's an app or a video game. So even if it's just one show, you want to keep it locally to Kenya, is how do I make it well-rounded and have more interaction online, create conversation on Twitter and things like that. Just how to expand the brand. I think that's the best way to look at it.
Yeah.
And then the aim is international, but if it's like selling products, like you're selling notebooks with the show's logo on it or t-shirts and stuff like that, then it will be successful enough to be able to say this thing should work internationally too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, which is cannot break anyone's bank, but can add value and can go very far. I mean, I think before I forget about this and talked about this, Nelson, live sports. Kenya is known for sports, but I don't think we've done enough around sports to be able to benefit. And here, this is all they do in terms of supporting their sports using live events. Yeah. Can talk a little bit about that, your experience.
Yeah, so I've not worked too heavily in sports, but from what I've done, which was like the first that comes to mind is like the FA Cup final, for instance, and things like that. It's like that's a live broadcast, and that's got like a stretch. It's a cup final and things like that. But I think we know Kenyans are talented runners and things like that. I don't know if there are local running events that happen,
Yes.
maybe yearly, and if there's coverage of that or not. But it's also a good way to promote the skill and things like that. Because in the UK we have things like the Great North Run, or like the London Marathon, where people run around the city, and then also that's got several cameras and coverage and all of this sort of stuff. So it's a nice way to also promote the landscape, the visual landscape of the country, so people see like the nation and what is going on there, and then to get more people filming because it's live and all of that sort of stuff. It's a good sort of avenue. But NFTS also has a course where people can learn how to direct sports. And then they get about a month placement at IMG, which is a really big sports broadcasting company that does snooker, table tennis, basketball, badminton. So yeah, I'd say definitely look into the NFTS sports directing or something sort of course, which is about 18 months or a year. Because I had a few friends that were on that, and literally there's about 8 of them. Everybody who left that course was working in sports when they graduated.
Mm.
They
No, I
got a
mean,
job in the industry after.
yeah, those are good ideas. You know, we had, is it Safari? We host the World Rally Safari. We have a Safari Rally, one of these sporting tournament. Is it a tournament? A league, not league. What
It's
are
the
they
world.
called?
It's called the World Rally Championship,
Oh,
Yes,
the
WRC.
driving.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So
Oh,
it
okay, you're
comes
in
to
Kenya.
Kenya.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
they were doing that live coverage, and
Yeah.
I think the footage was being sold all, because I could see subscriptions. You know, you
Oh,
subscribe, you know, and it was live, exactly what you said, covering the rally, the landscapes, everything, and it was internationally. So, I mean, honestly speaking, those are things we have, and you don't have to do the rally. Even ourselves, even the way we struggle, our sports can really help us, even to a small extent, to improve the funding mechanism around that. We haven't tapped yet into these opportunities properly.
I think so. I think the sports world is it's a wide range, and I have friends who are working. Actually, our biggest sports event is soccer. We've got
wow.
small leagues and championships that are in soccer, and with SuperSport is also a South Africa. It's an international brand. SuperSport made an entrance in Kenya a few years back, and did a huge crewing campaign, and still the capacity is there. Our biggest challenge is how we are organized to hold these events, and sometimes we do not get it right. But production wise, I think we're one of the stable countries that can actually do proper filming. I mean, we just had a sports week. It's called Kipchoge Keino, sort of classic marathons, and it was fantastically done. It was well done. If you ask me, I don't do sports. The only sport I watch is Formula One, which is not in our country. But if we are properly organized, and that's another streaming opportunity. That's another opportunity for full livelihood. I mean,
Yeah,
I know a couple of friends who live off filming sports, and they would don't like you ask them, let's go and film a TV show. They'll be like, nope. If it's not sports, I wouldn't come on board. And
yeah,
I respect that's their line, and that's what they do perfectly. So, I mean, once again, for the young person who's watching this, it's a whole landscape of opportunities. You just have to sort of dip your legs in and find, okay, this is my footing. And sports is one of the most exciting ones, especially if you've got an interest in the sport yourself.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I feel like there's so much to unpack from this conversation, because I feel like we've not delved into a lot, especially the proper business, the way I thought we can do within this hour. But I know that we need to change the way we think. Yes, Bonnie, we love and we are comfortable with what's going on, but I think we can do better in terms of the content to travel, because if you really want to do business, proper business, it has to be beyond one market. And I know the capacity we have, and Nelson has seen a little bit of what we have. And by talking to you, I think it's the first time you're connecting with a Kenyan in these
Yeah,
aspects.
going well, yeah. It's nice to
Yeah,
hear sort of what's going on in Kenya and things like that. Because I've always felt like, for example, when I watched Family Feud Africa, I felt it was cool, but then it's the only show with that sort of visual budget that you can tell money has been brought into this, that I was like, oh, this is nice. Like, we need more entertainment, and it's not all the time like just buy shows from America and watch it as it is. Sometimes maybe buy the rights but make it locally, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was quite nice and exciting, and I hope there's going to be more in the future.
We
yeah.
pray
I
so.
mean,
We pray that there will be more.
Yeah, no,
we
for
have to
sure.
make it happen ourselves. I keep saying that you don't have to wait for everybody to be on the bandwagon. But if you get to understand a few things here and there, and you're able to reach out to others, and you're able to talk to a few people, and you get things going, why not? Because you will never wait for everyone to be on the same mindset so that you do something. Those who understand you, work with them. Those who don't, they will catch up. When they wake up, they will find you.
Totally, totally. I totally agree. And Nelson, I'm so glad that you're saying that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, from, that's the only content you've seen from Africa. A friend of mine, by the way, directed the Family Feud, South Africa.
Real?
Yeah.
Oh, good job. They did well. Yeah.
And, I mean, I've loved it as well.
What's his name, the director?
He's directing. Wait, I forgot his name. But
those are people we are being asked over here. Who are your Kenyan directors? Who are your, all those people?
He's called Rudy. He's called Rudy Bota.
Okay.
He's an interesting guy. We worked with him as well on the Nat Geo show.
He's from South Africa.
He's South African, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I add that the way I found out about the show was my friend who's from Zimbabwe sent me YouTube links because there were small clips of like 3 minutes that were so funny, they were going viral. So from that, I was so interested. I was watching more clips, and I was trying to find full episodes. So I didn't find it because it was even on TV. It was the fact that they took the brand and then out of an episode, they put this tiny part on YouTube. Because they're still promoting it. So it's all about how to expand the brand, their social media presence, or at least their digital presence came to my attention through somebody else. So like, it's just nice to kind of be able to do that. But you realize a lot of shows nowadays do that. If there's a good scene or like a outstanding moment in a TV show, or when somebody wins a competition, or for example, yesterday, Champions League final, they put the highlights. So it means even if you couldn't watch it, you can still see it online. So that's kind of like another way to think. It's like, how can I make this live beyond the whole thing? Not everybody has an hour, but sometimes someone has 3 minutes. So you might want to upload the best 3 minutes.
Tell you what, I totally agree with you, Nelson. There's a show I did last year. It was called Too Much Information with Ty. It's a satirical sort of news roundup. It was totally Kenyan. But one of the most exciting things is that it was broadcast on Kenyan TV, but our biggest hits was on digital market. I mean, what we would do, we'll pick up a current issue that is happening in the week and sort of satirize it. But then we would make cuts of each particular scene and each particular story. Yeah. And that would accumulate so many views online. We actually thought if it were, given another choice, we would actually make it an online show.
Yeah.
We think we have more eyeballs online on screen. So, I think I totally agree. Digital is it's a big market. And, one of the things is also to consider it, quite highly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think what I would also want to hear from Nelson, having had all these discussions and, where the level, I think you have some idea of where the level is at this point. What would you advise, on this kind of shows?
I think...
and don't tell us to remain in Kenya.
No, I'd say, for example, people like the three of us who are working in the industry and things like that, I'd say also always think about back home, how can maybe it doesn't mean you have to move there or live there, but how can I pass on my skills, maybe train somebody or have a conversation with somebody young that we know who's creative or interested, and then say, oh, look, you like cartoons, have you ever thought about animation? Maybe there's a kid who's always getting in trouble for drawing in his notebook at school, just to kind of throw these ideas in their mind. So I'd say my sort of advice or my suggestion would be to think about the youngers or the people growing up and how we can make sure there's going to be people who continue this and take it further than we are able to do it. So yeah, anyone who's got skill or interest, just to kind of inform them and say, have you thought about this? Because we know people always, like parents always want doctors and this job and accountants, but like we're on a creative side and it's quite nice to be able to do that and explore, the creative bones that we have in our body. So sometimes people don't know until they're told you might be good at this, try it out. And then aside from that, I think it's good to like collaborate with people from different walks of life, even if it's the same country. You might have a friend who's really into fashion or somebody who really loves cooking, and you're like, you're such a good cook, let me just film you cooking. And that's content. And maybe they're not funny, but the food they make is really good. So you could have other people come and taste their food at the end. And then just like that, you've made yourself a cooking show. So sometimes you could use the people around you and what their interests are or their passions are to kind of even fuel the content that you're making.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, having seen both markets and, I feel that we can do, we almost have done even what you're saying. There's a lot going on with what you're saying. I think it's the next level that we need to think about. I don't know if you agree with me, Bonnie. How do we get ourselves beyond where we are?
Totally agree. I mean, I think I totally agree with what Nelson has said. And my appeal would be see what Eunice, what he said you're doing is great. We've got to accept that there are things that we've accomplished. There are things that we've been able to achieve. What are the learning curves? Where did we go wrong? Where did we get it right? And how can we pass this on to others as much as we collaborate? Because you never stop learning. I mean, just because I have a few years doing this business, it doesn't mean that I do not have learning days. I have very many learning days. I sit down with some friends who, well versed, and you learn. And that the trick about it is, as you learn, also make sure that you open the window for others to learn from you, and collaborate that with people like Nelson, who we're in the same business but from a different part of the world, who could see things from a different perspective. If I'm developing a concept, for example, I mean, would we be able to collaborate and say, like, boss, what do you think? I'll run you through this idea, show me what you think. Probably I'm looking at it from a very Nairobi mind, and he could show me a Sydney perspective. So that really makes us sort of get to the other level. If we don't do that, we remain champions in our own minds and in our own villages. But collaboration is great.
I mean, for me, I said I'll do the little thing I can with my little, networks. Whoever decides to support me will just do it. But I know I've not also made it. I'm also finding my way, in this, very interesting environment. But I think just talking to each other is also a good start, what I can do. But I know that we can do much better. Honestly, we can. And and I'll tell Nelson, this is just a snapshot of what you had. There's so much going on, and it's not just Kenya only. Just that we end up never in the, we are never seen, we're never in the limelight. Yeah. And perhaps that's what we should be fighting for, to get there. And I like, Bonnie, the way you said that we need to invest in these shows ourselves, because that's the only way, and get other people backing us and taking these concepts to others as well. If you can work even beyond one country, or as co-productions, or, as those kinds of things, perhaps that will help us a little bit better.
Absolutely.
There's something Bonnie said earlier about communicating, and I just remembered now. When he was saying you kind of need to know what jobs people do so you can speak to them, I think that's also a very strong point, because if you're like the director or a producer and the camera's broken down and you say, oh, can you fix the camera in 5 minutes, but it's a 3-hour job, you kind of need to see the creativity or production from like someone's perspective and understand that sometimes things take longer than they need to do, or sometimes things can be quicker. But then unless if we're able to kind of understand each other and how we all play a part in the big picture of this one show, then there's going to be so much miscommunication. And then also I think when explaining an idea to someone, a best way, if they don't understand it, is like talk to them about feelings. So like, this show feels like, or I want the audience to feel like this, so like emotions, everybody has emotions, everyone can relate to them. So I think if people aren't understanding what you're saying, it's kind of like, I want you to feel like I want somebody watching this to feel like it's the first time they've heard this happen or something. So it's like breaking it down so that people can relate to the experience. Or if they can't do that, then references. There's nothing wrong with saying like, this feels like watch this and watch that. It's similar to this. So you're saying take this as inspiration, watch this. Family Feud is the inspiration, watch it. We're trying to make something like this, but we're not copying it. We're just using this as the basis, if that makes sense. So visual references so that people can see what you mean. Because sometimes words can be confusing. So the more you can show people, the more they can understand it.
I mean, I promised everyone it's 1 hour. It's just past 10 minutes, and I think Nelson needs to sleep. Yeah. I mean, I think we've picked a few things from this conversation. You know, you might not have finished what you wanted to say, but at least we've had a good understanding of where we are operating from. Nelson has had about Kenya and, you know, what we also do. And hope Bonnie has had something useful also and made a new friend, hopefully.
Absolutely. I look forward to engaging. I mean, I'll be getting in touch with Nelson personally. I've loved the insights. I love what he's talking about, and I totally feel we're in the same business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, just that we are all in different parts of the world. So if we're able to talk more to each other, a lot of things are possible. So I think I'll just give everybody, you know, one last round to comment on anything and ask any question, then we can close it. Nelson?
I wrote some questions for Bonnie. I was like, what skills do you think a new director needs?
What skills the new director? That's I mean, if we're trying to close this discussion, that's a very wide question. Okay, I'll pick from the top of my head. The new skill, the skill that a new director needs to have is communication. They need to be able to understand the dynamics of their crew, their cast, all the departments, and communicate personally. I do that a lot. I try and break down every show that I'm working on and a brief for each department and each department head, and not just for the heads, but I speak to every crew member. I need them to understand how important they are to the whole piece. And I brief. I actually tell my clients a lot that I brief more than I direct filming, because if I feel my team does not understand what we are up to, then you will be screaming on comms. But if everybody onboards and they own the process and they feel they own the process and they own the show, then you find it easier when you're at the gallery. You say less and they owe it to you. But when you're the director who is feared and they treat you as a boss, they don't owe you nothing. They're just doing their job. And you end up not having communicated well. So that's one of the biggest things. A good director has to communicate and communicate and communicate until everyone, even those that are not on crew, understands your vision. They understand where you're up to. Now, troubleshooting will be the second, but I'll not talk a lot about, sort of solving problems.
Nice answer, though. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't have time to communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Bonnie, can you ask or final comments to Nelson?
I don't have much. I don't have much comments or a question. I was just curious how have you made it across big brands like Britain Got Talent? And I mean, I'm ardent. When I'm not in studio, I spend a lot of time looking at content across the globe. So I've been following the recent Britain Got Talent series. How have you been able to hope from one big show to the next big show?
My first answer would be God. Like I literally do not know. Like only God knows. But in terms of my personal, like the way that I work, I feel like everything I'm doing, I work for God. So I just give it 100%. And I just try to be humble, friendly. I like smiling and meeting new people as well. If I've not seen somebody, I introduce myself and say, I've not seen you. What's your name and stuff like that? Because you never know who somebody is, and you never know who might need your help. And also just just, you know, be present and things like that. So that's the way I find it. And I think another thing is the fact that there's not that many Black people means that I also think about bringing more people in that I know and how we can get more Black people. So it, unfortunately, I kind of feel like sometimes I have to be representative of like my race and stuff. So I can't afford to have moments when I make as many mistakes as somebody who isn't Black, because it's harder to forgive, or harder to forget. So I kind of need to be good with what I do or how I work to be able to have more people that look like me in the same field.
Totally. I totally hear you. And good
Yeah.
job. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. You're doing a good job.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
that's
mean, honestly, one day I think we should have a show from Africa. I don't know how, but we need people to back us. I think financially, everything else will fall into place. Because I think the knowledge can be put together, but I think the financial backing is what we need
yeah.
of a concept from Africa. So when you come with it to these people here and you're able to get collaborations or productions going on, you know, because you need them to be able to get into their mainstream market, and you know, that is the only way. But we need people to back those concepts from Africa, whichever they are.
It's a show
So,
I watched. Oh, I know you wanted to close.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
Nelson is about, because Nelson is the only one here who wants to sleep. The rest of us,
I can swear we can do another 10 minutes. We can aim for 1/2 past. That's cool. Yeah.
There's a drama. It's a UK show. I can't remember the name, but it's about an African. You know, it was about an African guy who passed on to the lady. I mean, it was a very interesting series done in the UK, but it's an African concept. I'll remember the name. I can't remember the name. It's a UK production. Amazing. I love the story.
Is it a drama or a
It's a
TV
drama.
show?
It's a drama. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a
drama.
drama.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll find the name. Let me try and find the name. I can't remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was really, really well done.
Oh, nice. While you're looking, I'll just say, I like the idea that you said about watching content from other countries, because sometimes if is what the two of you said, like Bonnie said, watch content from other countries, and then Easter, you're talking about if you're not careful, you'll be a king in your own mind, sort of thing, or a champion. Because until you know what other people are doing, you can't understand whether I need to push the standard more, or if we're ahead, so that's good, let's stay where we are, sort of thing. Because in Asia, the TV they make is completely different. And I love watching Asian shows, especially Chinese and Korean, because they have things like emojis on their faces, or somebody's crying and they have like tears running down the face. But then we don't always have that in the UK. But then some shows in the UK might try and test out something creative like that. So it's just about knowing what's going on in the market, who else is making stuff. Because you can also do there are times when countries might collab, production companies, someone in Korea might collaborate with someone in the UK and make The Masked Singer, for instance. That's like a it's called, I forgot the word. There's a word for it, but I forgot the word. But yeah, it's like two companies from two countries collab and make the same show. So it's all possible, but it's just about knowing who's the best contact or the best sort of person to reach for that.
Yeah. Oh, the show is called The Reaches.
It's called the
Reaches. It's called Reaches.
the Riches.
Riche. It's I loved it.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's cool.
You said you were saying something to me?
No, I was just trying to make you feel a bit, inspired. Like you can imagine, Bonnie, you do a show or a program, you come up with a concept and you own it, and you're selling it to over 100 countries in the world. Honestly, what else do you need? And you're getting all their currencies, and it's licensing, and it's coming to you.
That would be amazing.
Now, this is what we are looking at.
Possible too.
Yeah.
Possible.
That's what Big Cat Diary was all about.
Well, it's not easy, I hear, and but people have, like, how Korea has come up, honestly speaking, and we always keep saying that, Kenya at some point, you're almost at Korea at the time, but they're all coming from war. We can do a lot. We just need to be. I think the hunger needs to be there. I don't think we are that hungry enough. to want more.
And I'm sure we should do it. We should do it with proper, I mean, and when we collaborate right, I think we will do it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I think then the problem that curtails us, and this is just my thinking, but I think I'm onto something, is the knowledge. Yeah. If you don't have the knowledge around all these things, how they work, especially the business aspects of it, even if you want to collaborate with somebody, you don't know what it is, you know, what to expect or how to negotiate over this and that, and what is yours, what can you give out. Even if somebody's coming in with something, or with this financial backing, what do they need from your, you know, concept, what they're supposed to give, you know, those kinds of deals, you know. We need more information around that, because it's true, you can't do it alone, especially if you want to go global. But I think if everybody else has done it, why can't we? Then we can start saying, yes, we are somewhere.
I was saying, I found it interesting that you guys were saying the broadcast company would own the rights to your idea. Is that always like that's the standard in Kenya, or because
No,
they're showing it?
no,
On
it's
their
not
channel?
always.
Oh,
It's actually what Easter is talking about Lag City in acquiring information. I remember
yeah.
there's this production company that I spoke with them and I told them, look, guys, there are some decisions that you don't take without the advice from a legal department. And they'll be like, no, but why do we need to pay for a lawyer? And I'm like, because when you're dealing with another entity that has a legal department, they have a legal department because they need everything to be done in the presence of the law.
Mm.
Now, if you ignore that, it means I am going to sign an agreement that favors me legally, but it might not favor you. But if you don't look at it that way, you're going to be, well, I don't know how to put it politely, but you're going to be robbed legally.
Mm.
If, for instance, we're making a collaboration with you, Nelson, and
Yeah.
you're the writer and I'm the producer, and I tell you, look, I'm going to pay you $1 million or I'm going to pay you a small amount to forfeit the copyrights of this particular artwork.
Mhm.
And you don't think about it. See, you don't think about what does this mean? What is this leading to? And you just
Yeah.
agree to it because you didn't think it through. Yeah.
Mm.
Now, later on, you will not turn around and say, this guy robbed me because you actually consented to that, right? So, in the end, it's actually the knowledge. If you do not know much and if you limit yourself, then you cannot turn around and say everyone else is actually planning, bad against you. Get so those are the scenarios where, and then if you ask me again, we must look at the industry, or we must look at the business bigger than ourselves.
Mm.
Must place the interest of the business bigger than where Bonnie is going to benefit. And if you ask me, from an African producer or director, we tend to look at what's my cut? How much am I going to get paid here? Without looking at, look, we're setting up an industry. Sometimes you will take a hit because of the legacy that you will leave.
Exactly.
And not paid money, but you've done something significant. But you ask me, most of us we basically just look at it as a means to an end. We just want to earn from it, and we can earn from it and bleed it to death.
Yeah.
So I mean, as pioneers of the business, I would encourage everyone that it's not every opportunity is a money making opportunity. Some opportunities are so that we can be able to make something together. And yes, money will come. When it does, it will, it's fine. But not every opportunity. I mean, like, look at this opportunity that we have here to discuss and share ideas. We don't get paid for this.
Mm.
I mean, someone will think that, oh, these guys are, to put them on that panel. We don't get paid for that. You do it because someone else will look at it and be like, oh, okay, you might get opportunities out of a program like this. Someone will call you and say, oh, I saw you at a certain, that's okay. But if you only have to prioritize money, then in the end, yes, this is a business, but it's not, it has to take some sacrifices as well.
Legacy is the same word I was thinking, and it was cool that you said it. It's crazy because the brand and the content is bigger than any of us. We can look online and somebody will mention a show that was made 20 years ago, but none of us will know who the producer was or the presenter was. Presenter maybe because they're on the camera, but we wouldn't know anyone behind the scenes from the big shows back then or even now, unless if they're famous. But we know the brand. And the reason is because the brand outshines everyone, because it's more important what we're doing and why, as opposed to just the money. I mean, the money keeps us going, but it's not doing it for the money. There's so many jobs that pay more also. So you could just do that job if money is the key. But I
Yeah.
think it's more the interest and the passion. And also, I'm sure there's projects you said no to in the past that didn't sit well with you or weren't interesting to you. So that alone tells you, like, you know, legacy is important because it's going to be on your resume, and like that represents your personal brand as well.
Totally. Well said.
I mean, for me, I don't think I want to add more because Nelson has to sleep. I want him the next time. The next time I call him, Nelson will be saying, "Okay, yes, we can," because you know you treated us right the last time.
Yes.
But anyway,
That's funny.
yeah. So I'm really grateful for all your time and for your contributions, and I'm sure we'll be back with some other, you know, ideas that we want to discuss. You're open to bringing this and giving, you know, taking this further, because we're trying to connect ourselves and learn also a few things here and there. And you never know where this could lead. So I'm very happy to welcome more ideas, and looking forward to the next sessions. I think I'm trying to organize some music people as well, you know, people around here, composers, because I think we have a lot of music in Africa, and you know, we could hear some little bit more of what music looks like in this kind of entertainment formats, how to use the music, the composing bit.
Can I
So
nominate someone for the music talk?
we can talk offline, and you know, if, and you know, it's all you know, collaborative, and just sharing and seeing, because you know, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a few ideas, you open up somebody's mind and they start thinking, because I think our producers need to think more around how we use our music and open up more opportunities for music. And then we'll also do some gaming sessions. I've been saying that because we also need to see games as well from Kenya and other parts of the world, and see what else we can do about that. So thank you for your time. And we'll tell
Thank
Nelson kwaheri, which means bye-bye.
Oh,
In
nice.
Kiswahili, we say kwaheri.
That's
Yes.
good to know. I'll remember that. Kwaheri. Kwaheri, guys. Thanks so much for organizing.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Thank you
Later.
so much.
Bye.